So some weeks ago, I talked about our unrealistic expectations in relation to the body and how that can make us very miserable. And today I thought to continue with unrealistic expectations we have of our feelings, especially the pleasant ones. So last December, when I was back in Singapore, I had the chance to talk to the son of one of our longtime supporters. And he's studying business accounting at a polytechnic. So I asked him, why did you choose business accounting? And he said, because I want to get rich. Then I asked him, why do you want to get rich? He kind of looked at me like, what kind of stupid question is that, right? But it's a fair question from a monastic. And he thought about it, and he said, because I want to spend money without thinking. So his response really stuck with me. Yeah, but before I go further to, reflect on it, maybe you're wondering, wait, what does money have to do with feelings? Yeah, and I would argue that living in our consumer capitalist society, money and feelings go hand in hand. Yeah, once you have access to money, that brings you all kinds of pleasant experiences. You can buy all kinds of objects with the touch of a button, and have unlimited access to pleasant feelings and live happily ever after. Yeah, that's what we're told, and that's what this young man seems to believe. Well, I also thought about how during COVID, I read this news article about a supermodel who took photos of herself without any makeup on, and she's lying in bed crying her eyes out. Yeah, so she took photos of close-ups of her face with the eyes and everything all puffy, and she posted that on Twitter, and with a message that said, social media is not real. Yeah. Every day I wake up and I'm crying, and she said that it's getting really hard during COVID because she struggles with depression and anxiety. And this person has like a 4 million following on Twitter. So there were something like 20,000 comments of people just responding to her saying, thank you for speaking the truth, thank you for your courage, thank you for drawing attention to mental health issues. So of course I had no idea who this woman was, yeah. So I looked her up. Her name is Bella Hadid. And if you Google Bella Hadid, then all the images you get, of course, are of this beautiful supermodel with a ton of makeup on. She's on the red carpet in all kinds of high fashion outfits, people taking photos. So I guess that really stuck with me too because of the stark contrast. Yeah, here's this woman in her 20s who looks like she has everything you could imagine in the material, wealth, fame, and so on. And then those are the pictures of what she looks like every morning. She's crying her eyes out. She's so miserable. I mean, if that is not evidence that unending pleasant feelings does not actually result in more pleasure or even any kind of meaningful happiness, I don't know what is. Yeah? But that's the extent of the lie that society perpetuates and that so many of us buy into. And I think it's a huge tragedy because, as we've said, with the establishment of mindfulness on feelings, the great shock, to me anyway, that comes is realizing that pleasant feelings are not pleasant by nature. They are unsatisfactory by nature. It's like, what? As Aryadeva says, at some point, what he says is that the pleasant feelings are just a brief respite, a brief short break from the underlying dukkha that we always experience. It's just a temporary relief. It is not pleasant by nature. So at some point, it's going to change, and it's going to become either neutral or painful. So yeah, the more and more and more and more pleasant feelings you have, you're going to experience pain. It's not at all what is promised. But I think it gets worse than that. The outcome of having unrelenting, constant access to pleasant feelings is that you become stupid. You become more ignorant. That also did not occur to me, being stupid with lots of pleasant input, right? So when this young man says he wants to spend money without thinking, that is actually what will happen if you get rich. If we look at how the rich and famous people behave, they don't think. And why would you want that? To be able to spend money without thinking. His statement made me think too of another book that I read more recently. It's entitled Bright-Sided. It's like a pun on the term blind-sided. And it's by Barbara Ehrenreich. So she's a journalist who was writing about just, questioning the whole kind of positive thinking movement that's become very popular, especially in business, right? Like, just motivate everyone, and if you just think positive, everything's gonna go well, and you're gonna be rich and successful. Yeah, ignore reality, basically. That's her criticism of it. And she pointed out how in 2008, right, she was looking at the leadership of Lehman Brothers in her example, and how these people were hyper wealthy. One of them would ride a helicopter to work. That was his way of avoiding traffic jams. So I guess if you forgot something, you send the helicopter back to get it. Yeah. So these hyper wealthy people who live in this bubble of constant sense pleasure, right, were just completely blind to what was going to happen to the bank. And the chief financial officer actually sat down with the leadership and, said, my team has run the numbers. We are on the edge of a real estate bubble. This is unrealistic. We cannot continue like this. The bank is behaving very riskily. What happened was they fired the chief financial officer for saying the truth. It was just not what the leadership wanted to hear. Yeah. And of course, we all know what happened after that. Yeah, the bank collapses, and then it sets off a whole chain effect and a huge global recession. So that's what happens when you spend money without thinking. It affects not just yourself, but countless other beings. It was interesting to me too to hear some weeks back, right? Geshe Tapke was pointing out that even if you just pursue also only just the mental pleasure of the concentrations, yeah, that's like spiritual, blissful feelings, yeah, and you don't cultivate wisdom, right? So non-Buddhists do that too, moving through the different concentrations. The outcome is that your faculties become dull. Yeah, so that is the outcome of constant, unrelenting pleasure. You become stupid. Yeah. So it's been interesting for me to reflect too on the Buddha's life story and how it seems to me that some aspect of it is talking about how he related to feelings as Siddhartha, right? First, giving up that life of sense pleasure in the palace where he could have whatever he wanted when he wanted. And then also pursuing this path of mental bliss, right? And seeing that, oh, it doesn't last either. Yeah, it's not about attaining more and more and more bliss. And then he goes the whole opposite direction and pursues unpleasant feelings. Yeah, and that I thought, that's something I haven't thought too much about. But, we also impute all kinds of unrealistic expectations on unpleasant feelings. Yeah, you can have the view that if you are ascetic, if you endure unpleasant feelings, they will somehow purify negativity. Or if you just, stick it out, there will be a place for you reserved in heaven, whatever it is, when that is not the function either of pushing through or sitting through unpleasant feelings. So if we're not going to pursue pleasant feelings endlessly and reject the unpleasant ones, and we're not going to pursue the unpleasant ones and, reject the pleasant ones, then what are we supposed to do in response to all these feelings? I guess that's all the time I have right now. It's time for lunch. But no, okay, I think the next part, of the establishments of mindfulness, when we get to the establishments of mindfulness on the mind, that holds like a key and helps us to start to unpack what to do when we start identifying all this in our experience and how to respond. But I want to leave that as kind of a question that I've sat with for a long time too, instead of being reactive and fighting or rejecting and all that. What does it mean to really just sit and observe these different feelings as they arise, abide, and cease in my experience? Or to look at, what are the causes of them and what are their results? And I think that's something we all have to do, each and every one of us, for ourselves, right? It's not just like read the sutta and be like, okay, that's what the Buddha said. We have to learn to think for ourselves. And that's what I really wish for this young man who I spoke to last December, that hopefully at some point his aspiration in life will not be to spend money without thinking, but just to spend some time thinking, maybe, about what could be meaningful and purposeful to pursue in life. Because, if you think it's all about pleasure, the ending's going to be very painful. So yeah, let's continue to use our time well, and through that, hopefully bring a different visualization into the world as people who have dedicated our lives to spiritual practice.